Garrett Blevins here with a overview of 11 weeks out from the Arnold. And basically, this week went really well. It's one of those times when things are really clicking, and you'll kind of see some of that in the video footage as this goes on. But I left in some of my warm ups this day, especially with some of the heavier weights that I worked with. You'll see here this is 545 as my second to last warm up on squats for triples, and it moved well. Really, that's kind of what the fastest squats that I do look like. They're about that speed. And so as weights get heavier, I just can't be quite as explosive as I would be otherwise just because of the absolute weight. But what's important to note for RPE is how much bar speed slowing you see from rep to rep. One piece or one note to have is that 605 was actually my top set the first week that I was doing triples. And so now my last warm-up is actually 595. And I think I'm going to have to go to singles in my warm-ups because this just fatigued me a little more than I wanted to. That said, 635 moved very well. And for those of you who follow me on Instagram, I put some of these lifts up there from time to time. Usually the top sets of some of the better lifts the week that are more interesting. But these moved really well, and this is on Instagram, so some of you may have seen this already. But you'll notice that there's almost no bar speed slowing even on this third rep. Things move really well, and there's just maybe the tiniest bit. So that's a 7 or a 7.5 triple, which is really good for me. I'm encouraged to see where next week takes me. And left in some of the bench singles that I did as I worked my way up. I wanted to conserve as much energy as I could because I knew I was going to be repping out at least 5 reps on bench. And 385 moved pretty well, and also 425 moved pretty well. Though you'll notice you can see really well from this angle how funky my elbow was. There's just I was unlocking my elbows a little too early, depending too much on my chest to lock out the weights, especially on that rep, and not enough on my triceps. And so I need to hold the weight in a little bit better position and definitely depend on my triceps as the prime movers in that lower portion of the bench press. But in any case, that's kind of what happened with that day. Mostly happy about that 635 squat, though. I messed with my sumo stance on this day. So here you're seeing my regular sumo stance, which is narrower than what I ended up using at the end of the day. And this was the best deadlift day I've had in years. It was amazing. But not at this point. This 585, that first rep, felt very slow. I felt off. It just did not feel good. And especially that 605 there, it was just slow off the floor. It did not feel great. And so this triple here, I considered not doing another triple at all. But I decided to just try something a little different. And I tried it on this set. I widened my stance some, almost to where my feet were touching the plates at the beginning of the lift. And I did not point my toes out as much. And all of a sudden, the weight moved off the floor almost like magic. It kind of like surprised me how fast it moved. And I did that triple, and the RPE was like 3 RPE lower than the previous set. So I decided to do another set, even though I was planning only one top set, or sorry, three to 4 sets of 3 at that weight. But instead, ended up doing, I believe, 4 sets of 3 with 605. You see a slight adjustment there as I had to pull my feet in because they were actually sliding under the plates. But end up doing 9 reps with 605 here. Could have done 10. If I didn't have to readjust my footing mid set, and probably more if I hadn't been doing it in a fatigue state. So I am very interested to see where that new form on sumo deadlift takes me. One of the issues with it, though, is going to be hip health. Holding my feet that wide in the deadlift is really going to put a recovery strain on my hips. So I may only do 1 or 2 sets a week with that wide stance, and then I'll train a little bit narrower for the rest of my volume, just so that I can recover. I didn't put them in here, but I did 1 set, maybe 2, I can't remember, of some narrow sumo after that, but was pretty gassed after that set of 9, as it was just a pretty taxing set, but very happy. That was a 20-pound and 1 rep extra PR. I had done 585 for 8 before, and that was 605 for 9, and really it could have been more, but just didn't want to push it too hard. So you'll see here some high bar tempo squats. This is with 415, and these move pretty well. I was happy with them for the day. I mean, this is nothing special. the point of this is to really hammer my quads and fatigue them so that there's going to be some hypertrophy and some benefit from that. I'm trying to cause as much disruption with a lighter weight as I can, but the tightness that I have to hold as I descend to not let my hips kick up and turn this into a low bar squat really puts a strain on my back and my core as well. And so I'm wearing the belt. It's a little looser than I would normally wear it. So it's not really there too much to help me stay upright, but more to cue to brace into it as I am squatting. And squats are just moving really well right now, so I'm happy about that. Um, like I said before, I'm excited to see where the top end is for my squatting. We'll hopefully find that out at the Arnold. So yeah, I have a pretty good handle on where my bench is going to be, I think. The deadlift is the real wild card. I'm going to have to see just where that ends up with this new form. I'll also have to kind of manage recovery issues, but I used to do the sumo deadlift wider than I currently do now, closer to that stance that I was using there, but I got away from it because I had hip issues that I had to deal with. I just couldn't continue deadlifting that way. And unfortunately, that meant kind of a suboptimal form for my leverages. But it is what it is, and my hips are feeling better now, but I'm not going to push it too hard. Finished up with some comp grip spoto and some more meaningless accessory work. These pull-ups may not be quite as meaningless as some of my other accessory work. I think developing pull-up strength and back strength is good to do. So it's just, this these band pull-aparts probably are the most meaningless accessory work that I do. But they make my triceps feel better and just kind of more connected and tighter after some of my benching. So I like to do them, even if they don't have any effect other than to be fun. And so it is important to have fun with your workouts. I ended up, I think, doing 3 sets of 6. I'm really focusing on cheating as little as possible with pull-ups and really extending through full range of motion as well to develop the strength of the pull-up, not just get good at kip-ups or something like that. So continuing on with 1 John, a really good passage right here. I threw a lot of it together because I do want to get through the book and not take a year to do it. But you could with 1 John. There's so much packed into such simple language, but it's just amazing. I really enjoy this book. But let me read this for you. If we claim to be without sin, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us. If we confess our sins, He, God, is faithful and just and will forgive us our sins and purify us from all unrighteousness. If we claim we have not sinned, we make Him out to be a liar, and His word is not in us. Now that would be an indictment for those people who think they're perfect. And sometimes somebody won't tell you that they think they're perfect, but as you talk to them and get to know them, some people actually think they can do no wrong. Anytime they're called out on something, anytime they're shown a fault, they get immediately defensive and won't listen to it. And part of what it means to be a Christian is to acknowledge your shortcomings. That has a lot of carryover in lifting as well. You have to acknowledge where you're actually at and what you're good at and what you're not good at. Be real. Be authentic. Don't put on a face, Don't act the part when you're not the part, I hope that makes sense, but that's very straightforward. But what I love about this passage is, and what I hate too, is where the chapter break is. Because John goes right into this next section. There were no chapter or verses in original manuscripts. These were just letters written to people. The chapter and verses were added much later. But he goes right into this next statement. Because some people will say, well, we have to continue being flawed. We have to continue sinning. Right here, look, if we claim to be without sin, we deceive ourselves. Well, I'm certainly on board with that we've all made mistakes, but I also don't think we have to keep repeating those same mistakes. I think that people can be transformed. That doesn't mean that somehow their perfection in the future, even if they could get there, would undo the bad things they've done, and I'll talk about that more in a minute. But for me, in lifting, in life, and in my spiritual walk, I am always pursuing perfection. And I don't know why anybody would do it who has already accepted that they can never get there. Now I have a very particular definition of what perfection is. If you're interested in a Wesleyan understanding of that, A Plain Account of Christian Perfection is kind of the first dealings with that by John Wesley. But it is a relatively new idea, though it goes back to some deeper theology, some theosis that we often find. in the Eastern traditions, the Eastern Orthodox. So, anyways, I can't get too into church history and all those splits. Let me continue on with this passage. But John says, "My dear children, I write this to you so that you will not sin." Notice that John's purpose for writing is very clear. He wants to inform and teach people so that they will have transformation in their life. That means it's possible, unless John is just totally wasting his time here, giving them an impossible task, which I don't think he is. I think he absolutely thinks they can fulfill this high calling. But he wants to go back immediately and note that if anybody does sin, that we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ, the righteous one. He is the atoning sacrifice for our sins, and not only for ours, but also for the sins of the whole world. And this is one of those points in the Bible where you get kind of a key Christian doctrine, and that's that Christ is the one who delivers us from our sins, who atones for our sins. That we don't atone for our sins by our own good works. And a lot of people get confused on this idea, especially people who are searching after perfection. They think that somehow if they achieve perfection, all their good works and all the good things they do will somehow earn them a spot in heaven. And that couldn't be more wrong from a Christian perspective. From a Christian perspective, we're only ever seeking perfection out of love for God and out of a desire to be obedient to Him because we love God. It's kind of an end in itself. There's not like this using God as a genie for our own ends, like if we're perfect, God will give us everything we want. What we want to do is love God, and love for God means obedience, especially for John, but that's true across the Bible. And as we do that, we will stumble. I don't know anybody that doesn't. And there always remains an atoning sacrifice, forgiveness from God for us. The call here is to strive, is to attempt to make progress, is to work by the power of God to obey God. And none of that is ever for earning salvation. I had somebody tell me one time that I asked, we were talking about why people go to heaven, if there is a heaven, and all those sorts of things that you get into sometimes. And the person said, "Well, I believe that if you have more good works than bad works, you go to heaven." And I said, that just doesn't make any sense. And I think it does. A lot of people believe that, but it's so strange to me. If you murder one person, but you save 100,000 from starving, the judge isn't going to send you to jail for the 100,000 you saved. The judge will send you to jail because you murdered somebody in cold blood. Like, it doesn't matter. Good works don't cancel out bad works. I don't know where we got that idea or why that makes so much sense to people. I mean, it's very universal, actually. But I just absolutely believe that, one sin is enough for you to be out of God's presence forever. But God graciously doesn't leave us there. God provides a way for us to be restored in that relationship, and even works with us and teaches us and enables us to live in fully perfect love with God. And I just think that's awesome. And I don't know if anybody else out there feels the same way, but to me, that is just so amazing. And that relationship with God will then flow through us to our relationships with others. And as we love God, we learn to love other people. And we become and we embody who we were always created to be. We become our most authentic self when we relate in that way. In any case, that's what I believe, and I hope this devotion has meant something to some of you. In any case, Merry Christmas, and I hope wherever you're at, you're doing well. Blessings.